I'd love for you now sort of to introduce our next panel sort of on allyship. And, first I'd like to introduce Diana Lee. She's the co-founder of Constellation Agency, a marketing tech agency, born originally from the auto industry and now spanning multiple categories, and also founder of Do Good Auto Coalition, a nonprofit delivering food to food insecure homes. And then I'd like to introduce Amiri Midi Bakara Jr., a longstanding political strategist in New Jersey and the current chief of staff to Mayor Baraka, highly regarded among government operatives and elected officials for Midi's operational acumen and unmatched skills as a community organizer. While he's not at Townhall, Midi is a visionary energy behind Bottom Up Consulting, a political strategy firm with a focus on ground level organization and campaign management. So Diana, Midi, great to see you. Thank you very much for making some time. I personally had the opportunity to do a food rescue mission in Newark. It was an incredible experience. And I'd like to just sort of start off with some definitions around sort of food insecurity. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, defines food insecurity as a lack of consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy life. And during this pandemic, Brookings Institute identified that food insecurity has actually doubled. So it went from 10% to 20%. And so I think this sort of is a problem that, Diana, I'd love for you to start first in talking a little bit about the impetus behind Do Good Auto Coalition. What does this nonprofit do? How are you doing it?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having us today on this call with myself and also our Senior Vice President, Jen Nelson, on the call. I met Jen and actually Midi on the Newark project, and we worked actually together. So Jen was actually at the time working for another nonprofit, and the Do Good Auto Coalition was really working with all the nonprofits in Newark, New Jersey, so there were 6 of them, where we had to deliver to about 1,500 families that the Baraka family was trying to get out. So Midi Baraka, who is the chief of staff in Newark, New Jersey, was trying to get 20,000 pounds of food to over 1,500 residents in Newark, New Jersey. So he reached out to us, and through the Do Good Auto Coalition, we contacted most of the dealerships in those areas and asked them to transport the food to the 1,500 residents that lived in Newark, New Jersey.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing. And Jen, welcome to the team. It's great to see you and having your operational and your strategic acumen as part of it. I'm going to turn it over to Midi. And I remember when we were talking, you mentioned that you had a lot of Facebook calls, live calls with the community Monday, 5 o'clock when the pandemic started. What were you actually hearing from the community? What were some of the things that they were kind of sharing with you that were sort of ringing in your ears?
So let me just correct it a little bit. The mayor of the city, he has a Facebook conversation with the community every day since the pandemic started at 5 o'clock. And what I was on the calls doing actually was fielding most of the complaints and most of the concerns that the community had. And most of the concerns was food. Them losing their jobs and not being able to help their family and being able to survive during this pandemic. And so with that being said, the mayor decided that we needed to start this food distribution program. And that's how it started.
Gotcha. Could you talk a little about sort of, your connection with Diana and sort of when she brought a lot of this to you, what was sort of like your reaction? How you get pitched so many different times, right? All throughout the day. How did you know when this was actually real?
Diana, so the whole Diana thing, that's like, she's God sent, and I'll always say that because they was the great connectors. We had problems in the beginning trying to deliver the food. We had volunteers that would come help us bag the food, put it in, but we didn't have folks with vehicles. And that's so important because without the vehicles, none of this stuff could happen. None of the folks would receive the food. And not only that, our community, most folks rely on public transportation. They don't have access to cars and good cars. And she actually showed up with all of these folks and these vehicles, it kind of put everything in perspective, and everything, started to work. And not only that, with the cars, the service, when she get out the car, and the professionalism of the Do Good Auto Coalition, they show up and they do good, just like their name says, by the residents of the town and by us. So it was excellent. So it was definitely a much needed part of our operation.
Great. Thank you, Mitty. Jen, maybe I could turn it over to you and talk a little bit about sort of the food procurement, distribution, allocation process. Love for you to give a sense of how the audience, like for the audience, like how all of that actually works, so that food there's a pipeline of food that's constantly coming into the community.
Sure. So there's a couple of different ways that happens. The organization that I came from is called Table to Table, and Table to Table is a food rescue organization. So they actually pick up food that would be wasted from supermarkets and from organizations like HelloFresh, which is a meal kit company, and distributors, and that goes out into the community. And so the Wednesday distribution with the City of Newark is actually HelloFresh donating food that they're purchasing for the city, and Do Good Auto Coalition is then helping distribute that. There's also, so normally, that food, the rescue food, or in the case of other organizations like the Community Food Bank of New Jersey, is going to smaller organizations that are more local, that, church pantries, homeless shelters, before, when this was a thing, senior programs and after school programs. And then those sort of hyper-local organizations, and they range in size and they're on different scales, but then they're distributing that food into the community. And so what happened when COVID hit is a couple of things. One, a lot of those smaller pantries shut down. They were run by volunteers. A lot of those volunteers are elderly, and we actually saw in March a reduction in the amount of food that was going into Newark. So we wanted to help correct that. The other thing that happened is people could no longer just line up for food at their local pantry, right? Especially the most vulnerable people, the elderly, that couldn't come out and line up because of social distancing and the risk. So again, some of those pantries, like another mission that we run for Do Good on Thursdays is the ICC, the Ironbound Community Corporation in Newark. We're, again, delivering that food to people who would before have lined up for food. So the need is not only exploding and bigger than ever, but it's just changed in nature, and it's going to stay that way for, I think, quite some time. So our services are definitely going to be needed.
Yeah, thank you, Jen, for kind of highlighting the acuteness of the issue. I think the other, Diana, I'm going to turn it over to you, because there's a lot of pieces to this, right? There is the food piece, there's the actual vehicle piece, but I think there's also the data piece too. Could you talk about sort of like this data piece and how you've kind of used data analytics to help drive greater efficiency, operational, strategically, in the sort of food allocation process?
Yeah, thank you, Elliot. So one of the things that I would say is in getting to know the different type of missions that were happening in Newark, I noticed, especially with the Baraka family, so Mitty and the mayor, so sincerely care about the people that live there. I mean, they were raised there, their family there, and so when I had an opportunity to speak to Mitty Baraka, one of my questions was, what keeps you up late at night? And he said, Diana, I really worry that my community, the members of my community, is not getting enough meals. And it really touched me at that point. And I said, with that information, what worries you the most? And he said, are there duplicated efforts? Are there things that we could be doing to make sure that we're not missing a resident or a person that actually needs the food right now? And so when he said that, I went back to my data team and I said, we need to build a dashboard. And the dashboard will track all of the nonprofits as well as everybody that's delivering food into Newark, New Jersey. And then Mitty was so smart enough, he says, listen, if we give you unemployment data, if you gives you housing data, can you layer it all in and make sure that based on all the zip codes in Newark, New Jersey, can you make sure that everybody is getting the food supply that they need? So up until that point, I really didn't know, Elliot, what the data was going to do. But from speaking to Mitty and realizing where his heart was and realizing that he was really worried about the community members and making sure that everybody had the food supplies that they needed, it really pushed us and our data science team to develop a dashboard that tracked every zip code in Newark, New Jersey, tracked the food insecurity, tracked all of the nonprofits that were delivering millions of meals to each of the areas, tracked the areas where there was high unemployment and high housing data. The public school systems that basically closed down, and many of the students that couldn't get to the food supplies as well. How do we make sure that they got the food that they needed? And so that's what the dashboard was really built to do. It was built for the nonprofits as well as the municipality, the city of Newark, to go in and to be able to see all of the data in real time and make sure that they realized that there were no duplicated efforts, that we were going to eliminate most of the food insecurity by being able to see which zip codes didn't get the supplies. And so it did a lot, Elliot. So, and really it came from Mitty's heart, to be honest.
And
Yeah,
I just want to
go ahead, Jen.
I just wanted to add real quickly about the impact beyond, helping the city. Before this, there was never any sharing of information between the organizations that were, serving food insecurity needs in Newark or anywhere else. And so by developing this, the organizations are now sharing the data, and it allows those nonprofits to make smarter decisions about making equitable allocations to food. Those organizations can now look and see, okay, we all have waiting lists, right? They have waiting lists of pantries that are waiting to get food. And now we can say, you know what, we're going to focus our efforts on this particular zip code because there's an imbalance between, unemployment and the number of meals that are going to that. And that dashboard allows all of those organizations to do that as well as the city of Newark.
Awesome. Mitty, I'd love to hear from you about sort of how you're using the data. What's been powerful for you? How would you like to use it in the future?
Listen, they both touched on it. The equitable kind of growth. This is the thing the city is built on. We need to make sure that everybody is receiving the same amount of help around the city. So the dashboard actually leads the path, and it kind of shows us who needs and who doesn't need. And the thing about sharing data is very important because there are a lot of groups in our city that's doing a lot of food distribution programs in the city, and Table to Table is definitely one of the biggest community organizations in our city that's actually helping us distribute food as well. And they've been doing a yeoman's job, but the data actually puts everything in perspective and makes sure that everybody is receiving everything equally. For instance, our city, the median income in Newark, New Jersey is $40,000. So the majority of folks need the food, but then we have areas in Newark like Bradley Court, where folks is making under $20,000. We need to make sure that those folks are getting the majority of the food instead of Ivy Hill, where the median income is a little higher. You have middle-class folks, living there, and it's about $60,000 income. We making sure that they don't get the bulk of the food. So it's actually a great kind of strategic kind of plan, that whole data board. I love it.
Can I ask you how it was done differently beforehand? Or is it just people, that's why you probably get so many phone calls, right? Everybody's asking. Would love to hear a little bit about pre-dashboard, what that process was like.
Yeah, the pre-dashboard, we was relying on community organizers, managers of buildings, boots on the ground, hearsay, our Facebook Live conversations. But the dashboard, it actually, put everything in line to make sure that we were doing everything the right way. And to be honest with you, I think, a lot of the confusion and then a lot of the complaints that we've been seeing on Facebook, a lot of that has dissipated. It's gone down tremendously. Folks are now receiving the food on time. We get less complaints. The mayor is getting more compliments instead of more complaints, which is always a great thing in politics. So, and also the biggest thing for me in terms of then and now is the fact that we can see, the folks that are getting the food as opposed to the folks that was complaining about not having the food. And we could see it in real time that everybody is getting it the same amount, and then whoever needs more, we could see who had less and who had more.
That's amazing. Yeah, the data piece is really crucial. It's what marketers and advertisers really rely on to make great decisions, and I'm glad that that's being sort of pushed into the community. Mitty, I'm going to stay on you as we sort of close up, which is one of the things that you said when we sort of discussed before was that multicultural unity is really important where different communities are coming together. Could you talk a little bit about Diana's leadership in this effort and what it means to your community?
Oh, again, the stereotypes of Asian Americans, period. It just puts them in a whole different light. I mean, she's an Asian woman who came in the room unapologetically, unafraid, just come in and took a leadership role, and to see her and the way she moved and the way she socialized with folks and bring this great organization to the table, it's amazing. And it changes the dynamic and it changes the perception, what we need to change, our mentality, the way we think, the way we view things. When you see that, it's a big game changer in terms of cultural relationships, and to see that they're human and they're just like us and they feel the same pain that we feel and they want to help the same way that we want to help. So that's very important, especially, and she's a female, an Asian female, and it's nothing more than to see it in real time and to see, the way she talks and just her whole professional demeanor and the way what she brings to the table. I think historically speaking, we view Asian Americans a little different because of the Chinese restaurants that's in the Black community, and seeing her, is excellent, and to see her work with us in leadership, I think it changes that whole dynamic.
Thanks for sharing that, Mitty. I think, I'm going to turn it over to Diana and sort of let you, react to that and get specific in terms of what does Do Good Auto Coalition need to do to continue to do good?
Yeah, thank you so much, Elliot, for doing this. So I think that this has always worked because the Baraka family, their heart, Jen and her heart, we're all in the same place, right? And so when we realized when COVID hit and there were so many community members in need, our heart was there and we connected in a way that made us family in so many aspects, right? And so we're all in it to win it at this point, and we can't do it without the Asian Americans coming together to support us. At the end, Newark needs funding. We need to get people food and just the basics of what they actually need into this community. Like you've heard our chief of staff, Mitty Baraka, saying to us tonight that basically he's got members or residents there and make less than $20,000 a year, right? And so the suffering is so great. We need volunteers. We need people to help us. They need to come into the city. We need to actually get funding for the city. And so many aspects, we need UX designers. We need data dashboards. We want to create a huge movement there that if residents need food, that they can go on the Newark website and be able to see where is the food supply today and how can I get it to my own family members. So we're asking every Asian American on this call to unite and to really come and pour your heart out like we have to each other and help.
And the situation that's happening in Newark, and like we said, we know that COVID has disproportionately impacted Black and Brown communities. the situation that's happening in Newark is repeatable across the country. It's happening in cities and towns everywhere, and we really want to scale this thing so that we are able to help nationwide. And we're a very young organization, but that really is the goal, is to repeat the work that we've done in Newark by mobilizing volunteers, by working with local governments, by being a convener, getting the nonprofits working together, and then by tying a bow on it and providing the data so that nonprofits and government can work together and make better decisions. We want to do that across the country, and we're going to need help to do it. We just can't do it alone with the resources we have.
Thank you, Jen. Mitty, I'm going to give you the closing remarks for the panel. You have a community of marketers and advertisers on this sort of call. What would you tell them? What do you want to tell them?
I would urge them to stick their hand in and pull up their sleeves and help us. We are in a dire need. The situation, like she just explained, is like that in every brown and black community around this country. And it couldn't even be more prevalent in Newark. So, this is a labor of love for us. And it's a labor of love for everybody that's involved. And we can tell because we show up every day and we see when we deliver food to folks' homes, how much they need it and how much they appreciate the help. Folks in our town don't know when their next meal is gonna come. There's some people that rely heavily on Wednesdays to get a good meal. And if we could duplicate that, if we could make that even bigger or stronger, if we could do it another day, that will help so much more families. And that will help our city. And it will help our situation in terms of COVID, because folks lost their jobs. The unemployment rate is sky high now. We need to all get in and we all feel the pain.
Thank you very much, Mitty, Diana, Jen. Thank you very much for sharing the amazing work that you've done. I look forward to joining you guys tomorrow and sort of helping with that process. And again, continuing to enlist all sorts of folks, whether those be folks that have clients who have auto companies, or if it's manpower, if it's data analytics help. Like, I think this is an opportunity where it's not a case study. This is a real study of like doing good for society. And I think it's an opportunity, back to the question before about what's that kind of model minority sort of status and how do we evolve through this allyship? This is a great opportunity to kind of do exactly that and be sort of cross-collaborative, cross-cultural, and really sort of see invest in our communities. So thank you again, Diana, Jen, and Mitty for doing this. And again, to the audience, we will send out a link with all of this sort of detail about what you might want to get involved in. So I'll just sort of share 2 minutes of closing remarks, which is, again, thank you very much for joining tonight. On behalf of the 3AF and Jay, the president, we hope that you were sufficiently inspired by tonight's guest. The question is, what's next? And immediately, again, we're going to drop that link into that chat where you can sign up based on your interest area and any of the things that you've heard of. We're going to meet you where you are. Please feel free to, again, fill it out, and someone will follow up specifically from that organization to kind of enlist you. Tomorrow, there's going to be a session with Melissa King, the celebrity chef who was featured in the Ad Council film by the director Alan Yang, at 1 p.m. on the Now This and the Ad Council platforms. In the future, please expect another 3AF marketing and advertising town hall to continue to highlight the amazing work that different groups are doing. Unfortunately, today we were only able to actually showcase only a handful of efforts. We know there's incredible stuff going on, and it's a chance again for everybody to kind of see and celebrate and also activate against what's going on as well. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We know that the issues are incredibly rich and complex and require a lot of discussion, but really the marketing and advertising industry really looks forward to being an active part of these discussions with other industries, with other communities, and find ways to take action together. So thank you very much again generously for everybody spending our time tonight, spending time with us tonight. Have a fantastic evening. and good night. Take care, everyone.